Hello and welcome to the Monday Show live on a Tuesday with me, Andrew Musgrove, and him, Aaron Stokes. Lots to talk about as Newcastle United drew 1-1 with Brighton at the Amex on Sunday. But the key question is, crucial point gained or 2 points dropped? We'll look in depth into the game. Are United's big name players faltering at the wrong time? Are you backing them to rise to the occasion this Sunday against Chelsea? Just how confident are you guys that Newcastle will qualify for the Champions League? Big thanks to Crown Paints for coming on board and sponsoring the pod alongside NordVPN. We love our little family of sponsors who generous support makes sure we can continue to do this for free. Let's get on with the show. Aaron, happy Tuesday. Are you well?
I'm very well. It doesn't feel like a Tuesday, I must admit. I think I've been thrown off by the bank holiday. It feels very much like a Monday. But I tell you what, I think I'm feeling positive after Sunday. I'm not going to be on a downer. I think there's plenty to smile about, plenty to be happy about. And to answer your first question that we're going to put to the audience and the listeners, I think it is a good, solid point gained at the Amex.
I think it's an excellent point, given the history there, given the fact that this time of the season, it is all about points, not so much the performance. I think it is a massive, massive point.
I think you just have to go back to probably this time last week when we were talking about the build-up to the game, the preview, and how many people would have said, well, we'll take a draw. And I think not only that, Newcastle have done well to get a draw, but also I was actually quite pleased with the manner of the performance. I know others might not agree, but I actually think second half they were in complete control. We've got the stats to back it up as well. So yeah, I don't think there'll be much negativity from me today, if I'm honest.
Well, I did ask people on Twitter to get in touch with me. I asked the question, as I've asked you, how you're feeling about that point. Was it a point gained or was it 2 points dropped? We've had a few responses. John says, I think overall it was a point gained. CT says normally would be a good point, but under the current circumstances, it's got to be 2 points dropped. Sajeev says a point is okay, but Brighton were there for the taking and we could have had all three. Jake says we needed not to lose, which we did. Felt like a loss after the penalty decisions and Brighton not really landing a glove outside of the Minteh goal. So a little bit split. I can understand both sides of the argument, but for me, I think when you have the context of Newcastle's horrendous history there, that Brighton are very much the bogey side for them to come away with a point after how the game had gone. It felt like no matter how hard they tried, they were just never going to get back into that game, even if they deserved to. So I'm taking a point all day long. I predicted them to lose that game, both in the match preview and when I did the final Premier League table a few weeks back. So I can't be disappointed with a point at all. I really do think it is a brilliant one. Let's start with the goals. Inevitably, Yakuba Minteh opened the scoring with a tremendous goal. But I think if you've been ultra critical from a Newcastle United point of view, you've got to be quite critical about the defending because it wasn't very good. He manages to kind of dart past Livramento, then Tonali kind of turns his body away and he fires into the corner. It's a lovely goal, lovely finish. But from Eddie Howe's point of view, I think you'd be quite disappointed in the manner you've conceded that goal.
Eddie Howe was disappointed in the manner he spoke about it after the game. And look, yeah, I would agree. I think Newcastle weren't quick enough to close Minteh down. They give him too much space on his left to let him dummy it. You know, there was a lot of things that could have went wrong. Maybe got a little bit fortunate with the deflection to leave Pope rooted to the spot. But yeah, I think they could have done better. Look, it's inevitable that he scored against us yet again. But I think what we should really talk about, and it's the only thing we should be talking about after Minteh's goal, is what on earth was that celebration? Generally, I've never been as confused as a celebration as I have. And I think a lot of Newcastle United fans will agree. What was going through his head, I don't know.
I don't know. I've looked back at it and I'm still a little bit baffled. But he has come out and explained it, right, hasn't he?
He has done, yes. And I'm going to have to...
Was it an actual explanation or was it him just kind of talking himself around into that he didn't make a massive mistake?
Yeah, no, he came out and sort of said, oh, it was a nice celebration. You know, it was just a reminder to the Brighton fans that I'm here now and I'm focused on them. But I think at the start of the celebration, it looks like he's again asking for forgiveness from Newcastle fans. Then he sort of looks as if he's saying, look, I'm sorry that I'm here at Brighton. And then all of a sudden he sort of wags his finger and he points to the ground and he kisses the badge. And it was really interesting watching Danny Welbeck and Van Heck and all that sort of trying to pull him away and thinking, no. It was just it was a car crash. It was a mess. It was very unusual.
Inevitably that he would get the goal. And obviously that then raises questions about what had to happen last summer, him being sold and Newcastle United in need of a right winger as good as Jacob Murphy has done. But it goes back to the fact that Newcastle United needed to sell him. That's the bottom line. It doesn't matter how well he's done and how much opportunity he would have had in this Newcastle United side, because I think he probably would have been first choice. Obviously, we don't know how him and Murphy would have battled it out, but it really doesn't matter, does it? Because the bottom line is PSR forced Newcastle United to sell, and that's what they had to do.
Yeah, look, Eddie Howe, every time he's asked about Minteh, pretty much gives the same answer. He gives the same one about Elliot Anderson as well, and that's that, he really didn't want to lose either of the two players. We know, but we've spoken about it hundreds of times, Newcastle's hands were tied last summer. They would have certainly been hit with a points deduction or some form of PSR penalty had they not sold Minteh and Anderson over that weekend in late June. And look, Newcastle will say, look, we got £26 million profit for a player who never kicked the ball for us in a year. Dan Ashworth will turn around and say that was great business by him. But then on the flip side, obviously, he does look like a player with great potential. I like Minteh. I think he's full of energy. He's full of running. He looks dangerous. He's scoring goals in his first Premier League season. So yeah, it's a little bit bittersweet, isn't it?
Graham says, genuinely thought Minteh was trying to apologise, but then lost it. I think that is probably the best summing up of what happened. Interestingly, because I've been trying to find this out and I've not been successful as of yet. So I don't know if you know the answer to this, both on Minteh and Elliot Anderson. Do we think there's any buyback clause in it?
As far as I'm aware, no. I think there's definitely not a clause included in Anderson's. If I'm honest, I'm not too sure about him going in.
Shame that, because obviously we'd all love Anderson to come back at some point.
And clearly, Yankuba Minteh wants to come back.
Exactly.
Based
Depending
on
on
celebration.
how you interpret his celebration. The goal came against the run of play. United had been on top. Harvey Barnes had forced a save. Joe Willock was creating some danger. So very frustrating that they conceded.
Yeah, really, really frustrating. I thought Newcastle had started well. Willock and Barnes both really busy down that left-hand side. Barnes looking like the only sort of player in the attack that really wanted to make things happen. Willock, again, like we saw at Ipswich, was trying for things to come off. He makes that fantastic run from inside his own half and comes close to scoring.
Gets it all wrong, though.
Gets it all wrong with the finish, but
it's easy for us to say that in hindsight and then looking at the replay, because what I've done is I've clicked pause in the moment that he decides to go in that little bit further and then finally shoot.
I think it's a good effort.
No, I don't. If you look, and again, I've got the ability to be looking at from a height because that's where the camera's positioned. But if
in
you
slow
look,
motion,
exactly. So I say that while making this point, but Alexander Isak is at the far post. You've got Tonali running in, frees a bird into the box. You've got to be able to make those decisions in that time.
Is that a case of it's Joe Willock thinking, look, I need to win my spot back in this team. I've got to probably go for
definitely.
goal.
And you can't begrudge him on one hand for taking that opportunity and trying to score, because that's what he's in the side to do. But at the same time, I think a player in form, feeling happy, because he'll be well aware it's not working at the moment for him. I think he makes the right decision. He puts that ball across the face of the box.
Yeah.
Defender rushing in, Isak's at the back post or pulls it back to Tonali, who pops in the back. I think he got that all wrong. And he just had 17 passes in 74 minutes, one successful dribble, and just 36 touches before he came off the pitch, which again says to me, didn't light up the Amex. Big game this Sunday for him. I mean, I know you said he was trying. That's all good, but that end product just lacking.
Yeah, look, I again, I'm going to come on here like I did last week and try and give Joe Willock the benefit of the doubt. I think he will come on for these run of games. I don't want to keep going over it, but he is a confident player, I think. And Eddie Howe keeps saying he's a pivotal player. He will get better with these games under his belt. And look, I know time's running out because we've only got 3 games left this season. But I suspect he's going to be in that team again on Sunday at 12 o'clock. And I think, a home game against Chelsea, will that suit him? I think so.
Well, I have to say, if there's a chance that Joe Linton is able to play that game, I'd be putting him in that starting 11. And I say able to in terms of actually making an impact, not just...
It doesn't look like he's going to be. No, it looks like he's probably going to miss the end till the end of the season.
Joe Linton in that side would just totally change the dynamic of that game. I just don't think Joe Willock's going to be able to make an impact. I know he scored, didn't he, against Chelsea? Was it last season before?
And then the Carabao Cup this season.
I mean, look, this is the kind of stage in which these kind of players flourish and prove critics wrong, like myself. But I'm a little bit worried about Joe Willock getting lost on Sunday.
It's a huge game Sunday in the middle of the park, because you look at Chelsea's strength and it's in the middle with Caicedo and Lavia and Fernandes all in fantastic form. Looked really, really good against Liverpool on Sunday. So yeah, that's where the battle's going to be won and lost. But I think Willock starts on Sunday again.
Oh, I do as well. I mean, me seeing Joe Linton to start is more hope than expectation. I do feel for Joe Willock because there's clearly a talent there. And when you've come in to replace someone like Joe Linden, it's always going to be difficult to leave your mark. But it kind of does feel now or never, doesn't it? I've been told that transfer chiefs at Crystal Palace have had him recommended to Steve Parish, and that they think they can get him. And I think that move would work out for him.
You could see that happen.
But what I want more than anything is it to work out here, because Joe Willock's at the right age. We know he's got talent. We know he's got that ability. He's different to any one of those midfielders that he's battling a place for. And with the need for a large squad next season, he'd be absolutely crucial. But at the moment, it feels like he's a bit of a passenger and he's being carried.
It's a really weird one with Joe Willock, because I remember last summer we were sat here having a debate of who stays, who goes, and some fans that were watching back then, even yourself, was maybe saying, well, if the right offer comes in, you sell him. He's had a really up and down season. He came in around October, November and played really well down that left-hand side with Hall and Joel, and he was pivotal in those games against Arsenal and Chelsea in the Carabao Cup. But then, as we touched on last week, really limited game time. He's now got to make these final 3 games count. He's 2 down out of 5, and he probably hasn't done as well as he wanted to. And again, then it goes back to the thing we talk about all the time. Is he one of Newcastle's sellable assets in the summer? If a Crystal Palace or a Leeds or a Brighton comes in and says, you know what, we fancy Joe Willock for 20 million or so, I think fans would be split as to whether you accept that.
Yeah, let us know what you would want for Joe Willock, what it would take for you to cash in if you were making the decisions in the boardroom. Phil says, I'd rather have Miley playing than Willock personally. Tel says, I agree with you, John. Miley doesn't let us down. Trul says, would rather have Miley on at right centre mid and Bruno on at left centre mid than Willock, than Willock, because he's a 50-50 player, 50% bad, 50% good, too inconsistent, and hasn't been good for a long time in their opinion. Graham says Willock is a Nelly man, tons of talent, but not consistent enough. And part of me just thinks, is now the time to be relying on a player to come good? Do you know what I mean? It would be Hollywood. It would be the perfect script.
But I think that's harsh. I think Willock over the years has shown he's, we're not asking for a miracle. Joe Willock
we're not, but I don't think it's as easy as flicking on a switch. I think there's something there that's not allowing him, whether it's in his head, whether it's his fitness. At times yesterday, he really looked like he was struggling to keep up with pace. I agree in the first half, I thought he had the legs about him, but there were times when he just looked like he was struggling. And this isn't scapegoating him, because Newcastle United didn't drop 2 points at Brighton because of Joe Willock. But what we need is Joe Willock to realize his true potential. And I'm keeping everything crossed that it does happen, but I'm just not confident.
I'm on the Eddie Howe school of thought, train of thought, that he's gonna come on for these games.
But is that is kind of the point I'm making? Like, if we had 10, 15 games to go, then I'm comfortable. I'm sitting here saying, yeah, I agree with you. But we haven't. We've got how many? 4? 3. Do you know what I mean? We haven't got enough games to say, next game will come good. I mean, look, if he scores the win against Everton on the last day of the season and gets us Champions League football,
just
then
fast forward to next Monday when he scored the winner against Chelsea.
Well, I hope he does. Brighton didn't kick on after their goal, and you can see that they're a team that are struggling. Newcastle remained the better side. 2 penalties awarded, but then overturned due to for Anthony Gordon coming off the bench. Instantly wins a foul. Sadly for Newcastle United, it was outside of the box. Then Joe Willock shamefully throws himself to the floor and was rightly booked for diving after VAR had looked at it. Credit where credit is due. VAR got it right.
Yeah, they did 2 big decisions, which admittedly in real time, I can't really have too much criticism of the referee, because I thought both of them in real time were penalties. I thought Willock had been fouled, and I thought Gordon was inside the box. I think Brighton get really lucky that Lamptey doesn't make that challenge half a second later. Willock, yeah, poor from him. I think he's expecting the contact, it doesn't come. And so, yeah, 2 good decisions by VAR for once. We're going to be sitting here praising them.
Yeah, they got it right. That's exactly what VAR is there to do, to be that safety net for the referee when he gets the decision wrong. You can see how easy it is to get a decision wrong in real time, because both looked in real time like there were penalties, but VAR got it right. And you can have absolutely no complaints whatsoever. Jordan Tune for Life says putting Miley in against Chelsea would mean changing players' position in such a big game. It's madness. Willock didn't play badly at all. Big names had a below performance, but some fans just love a scapegoat. So yeah, VAR saved Brighton, but it was the right decision. On Gordon, though, looked a little fresher. You feel like he's building up to a big performance.
Yeah.
But Eddie Howe has an issue there because in recent weeks he's moved Harvey Barnes over to the right every time Gordon's come off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, and it was the same on Sunday, Harvey Barnes has been Newcastle's most threatening player. Yet on the right, he doesn't look as comfortable. How does Eddie Howe get that decision right in terms of bringing Gordon back, maybe starting him against Chelsea, but doing it at the expense of Harvey Barnes on the left? I mean, it is a big decision. It's such a crucial time in the season.
Yeah, if I'm totally honest, I've got no idea what Howe does on Sunday in terms. I mean, like I say, I think he starts Willock, but in terms of the front three, I think it's anyone's guess as to who drops out between Gordon, Barnes, and Murphy. I personally think, if you ask me right now, he'll go Barnes and Murphy. But I think that was, look, I don't think Gordon set the world alight. Did really well to win the penalty. That wasn't one. That was definitely his best cameo appearance, as you say. It looks like he's building up that fitness. He looks like he's getting a little bit back. And I think there'll be a lot of people watching this now, listening later on, that think, yeah, look, bring him back in, probably at the expense of Barnes. I wouldn't be against that. I think the one thing for me, I think I'd definitely be starting Jacob Murphy. I don't think he deserves to come out of the team.
But Barnes does on his run of form. I mean, would you disagree with me that he was probably the most threatening player on Sunday?
So if I disagree with you, but not for that. I think he was Newcastle's most threatening player in the first half. He was the only one that really wanted to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and really try to take it to Brighton. But I actually thought he looked good on the right.
I think he looked better than he has done, but I still don't.
I don't think he looked uncomfortable. I thought he looked solid on the right. He looked like he was, getting the ball out of his feet, trying to make things happen. He had a good effort saved in the second half by Rugen.
I think it would be so harsh if he doesn't start on Sunday.
Would it?
Yeah.
So who are you going?
Barnes and Murphy, just simply because I would probably switch it halfway through, as much as I'm against that because I don't think it works too well. But I just think what you want in the first half, the first hours, you want that natural right winger, which is Jacob Murphy. You don't want someone like Barnes who's getting down to the byline and then all of a sudden he's thinking about it. Do I hit with my right or do I turn in and hit with my left, which I'm more stronger on? It's a horrible dilemma. It reaffirms the need to go out and get, Brian Burmo in the summer, whoever it might be, to come in and upgrade on that right wing. But for me, it's Barnes and Murphy. I could see Anthony Gordon starting, though, on Sunday. Big game. This is where he earns his money. I think it is probably a flip of a coin to whether then Barnes starts on the right. I think on form, you would probably start Barnes on the right. But would Eddie Howe do that? I'm not too sure he would.
No, I don't think he drops Jacob Murphy out of the team, and rightly so. I want to see Jacob Murphy starting on Sunday. I like watching him in home games. So yeah, look, as I say, it's anyone's guess. I'd be really intrigued to know what the comments are saying as to who starts on the left.
We've got Ghost here on YouTube saying Gordon has to come in. He looks like he's getting there, and he is the better player than Barnes. Class is permanent and all of that. Let me know in the comments what you guys would do. We've got Ken saying, I've got a feeling that he starts Barnes and Gordon against Chelsea. We can't afford another performance like Murphy gave on Sunday. Harsh?
Look, Jacob Murphy didn't have his best game on Sunday. I'm not going to try and pretend he did, but I think, if it's harsh to drop Harvey Barnes out of the team, how harsh is it to drop Jacob Murphy out of the team?
DXK says Gordon starts next to on the left and Barnes on the right. I think what is really interesting is the fact that we've seen the substitutions be made so often over the last few weeks, where Murphy has come off and Gordon has gone on the left and Barnes on the right. And penny for Murphy's thoughts on that.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I think, isn't it actually? I mean, look, this just sums it up, doesn't it? We're going to have a lot of people in these comments here and a lot of people listening saying it's time for Jacob Murphy to drop out this team for Gordon and Barnes on the two flanks. Look at the season Jacob Murphy's had. Look at the numbers he's putting up home and away. Look at those assists that he's getting. Looking at the partnerships he's building with Alexander Isak. And yet still, there's still people that want to drop him out of the team. It sort of has shades of that Sean Longstaff effect 2 seasons ago when he couldn't do hardly anything wrong in the eyes of Eddie Howe, but hardly anything right in the eyes of the fans. So, look, I'm not ready to be calling for Jacob Murphy to drop out of the team on the back of one poor performance at Brighton. It is interesting that he keeps coming off for Anthony Gordon and he is switching and he's clearly trying something new with Barnes that he hasn't before, because Harvey Barnes in his career has very, very, very rarely played on the right, whether that was at West Brom on loan, whether that was at Leicester. But for me, I think it's a straight shootout between Gordon and Barnes as to who starts on the left. And I think Jacob Murphy will be there. Rain or shine, like it or love it, come Sunday morning.
And as someone has pointed out in the comments, yes, I know that Harvey Barnes is a right footer. What I meant was when he comes to shoot on the right hand side, he looks more comfortable trying to quit on that left rather than shooting on the right, because it's a bit harder to well, it's hard to kill one in from if you're playing on the right hand side. So he looks more threatening on the left hand side to put one in off the left wing. So interesting to see what how it does on Sunday. Keep the comments coming in. Alexander Isak finally gets the breakthrough after Fabian Schär's free kick was handled in the box. Really nice penalty for Isak. A good finish again. 23rd in the top flight this season. Alan Shearer's record or tally of 22 back in, I think it was 2002, 2003, now being beaten, which is fantastic for Isak. But we have to be honest, once again, he was missing for large parts of the game. Didn't really make a run, Aaron, at the defence until midway through the second half. Cut a frustrated figure. The brief glimpses at goal, I think he got wrong. There was a back heel that he tried to put in the back of the net when Gordon was the better option. He should have laid it off to him. And once again, look, it is very difficult to be critical of Alexander Isak. He scored a boatload of goals. Newcastle United would be nowhere near the Champions League places without him. But it's a fair question and a fair point, isn't it, to say he's been missing in action of late.
Yeah, he has. He's been struggling in certain games. I don't think Sunday was one of his best by far. I think, as you say, we didn't really see him until the second half. He was very, very isolated in that first 45 minutes. And it wasn't, as you say, until we saw him maybe drift out towards the left at times in the second half when Newcastle were really giving it a go that we saw him really involved. Took the penalty really well, I thought, which is probably the only saving grace for him. But yeah, look, teams are either figuring him out or, as we've touched on, maybe he's not 100% fit. I think carrying that load of being Newcastle's main striker for such a long period of time, trying to keep himself fit, also playing for Sweden, without really a consistent backup to give him a rest here and then, it's maybe taking his effects. It just looks like a player who's had a very, very long season, who's done very well in front of goal, but is maybe just waiting for the summer.
What's the solution? How does Eddie Howe, over the next few games, find Alexander Isak, who's hit 23 goals this season?
Look, I don't know, and that's probably why I'm not paid Eddie Howe's budget or wage to do it. Look, I'm not sure. I think, look, it feels weird that we're sort of having this conversation about Alexander Isak because, you say, he's been putting up those numbers. He's still scoring goals. He's still impacting games. But I think, look, I don't know. Do you ask him to drop into the channels more? Probably not, because you want him in the middle. Our teams just figure him out. Is he just tired? I'm not too sure.
A lot of people in the comments asking whether we think Isak is injured or is he just not fit?
Look, Eddie Howe insists he's not injured. We know he's had sort of groin troubles for the last season or two, which he's maybe had to manage. I don't think, as we say, in an ideal world, Eddie Howe would have played him or had to have played him as much as he had this season. But if you speak to people in the club, it's very much publicly that he's not carrying anything and he's just, maybe a little bit fatigued.
Interesting that Callum Wilson came on and Isak stopped on as well.
Yeah, at first looked like it was 4-2-3-1. Tonali and Bruno sitting with Isak in a 10, but then as the second half wore on, it actually looked more like 4-4-2, which is very, very unusual to see Eddie Howe playing 4-4-2. It looked okay. Wilson again struggled to really get into the game. He was putting himself about. Isak looked like he had a little bit more freedom with the two of them top, which was maybe promising. I don't think it's going to bring in sort of, I don't think that's going to change Eddie Howe's thinking. And we're going to see 4-4-2 on Sunday. But it was interesting to see the two of them play together because, I mean, when was the last time that actually happened?
Wilson had that one chance. And again, if you've been ultra critical, Harvey Barnes, does he get the pass wrong? Does he need to have it be a little bit more in front of him?
Maybe, potentially.
I feel like the game on Sunday, as much as Newcastle dominated and were the better side and deserved the point, there were several examples of where the decision-making was just that little bit off. And that's what was missing. And that is the difference from being a good side to being the best side.
Yeah, looking at, and Eddie Howe admitted after the game, look, I think we can all sit here and admit Newcastle deserved at least a point. If I'm honest, I think they deserved 3. But as Eddie Howe rightly said on Sunday evening, it wasn't a vintage display. It wasn't them at their creative best. They weren't clinical enough. That is Barnes, Wilson, Isak, Murphy, Gordon included. They could have done a lot better in front of goal for their possession and the touch in the boxes that they had. But look, they had the line share possession. They had a better expected goals. They had more touches, more complete passes. they just really struggled in front of goal, I think. And look, the Amex is a really tough place to go for Newcastle more than most. Brighton this season have avoided defeat or taking points from Arsenal, Chelsea, City, Forest at home. It's a very good performance for me. But I'm not going to sit here and say it was Newcastle at their best. They did struggle in front of goal.
I just wonder, with the game as stretched as it was, especially towards the end, is William Sula not a better bet than maybe Callum Wilson? Or even, do you take Harvey Barnes off and bring him on the right? I just think there was so much space. And when you've got a man who's got so much energy about him, she's bouncing around the place. Okay, he might lack that kind of defensive discipline, which Eddie Howe, really needs in his sides. But we're talking about the game being so open that actually I think what you would get from Masula going forward in those final 10, 15 minutes, it's probably worth the risk of not getting it going back.
I think you've just summed it up there. I think Eddie Howe was probably looking at it thinking, that defensive side of the game, if something comes down Brighton's left, Newcastle's right, and they go and snatch a win, there is going to be fingers pointing, and we'll probably sat here going, well, why is he throwing Willock on in a game of that magnitude at that time? So I think it's quite telling that we saw Willock come on against Ipswich. He played very well, but look, the game was done. It was 10 men. It was 2-0 at that point. I think that sort of tells you where Eddie Howe's thinking is with Willock, at least until next season.
There was an article written over the weekend by a very respected journalist who kind of said Newcastle United's big names aren't maybe at it when they needed to be. Do you agree with that? The question we asked there in the introduction, are they faltering at the wrong time?
No, not really. I don't think so. I think, as I say, I can pick lots of positives out of Sunday. I think it was a good performance and a good result. On another day, I think Newcastle would have won that game. They were very, very good in a tricky performance against Ipswich, which could have been hard, even though Ipswich went out in 10 men. I don't think they're faltering. I think they're on track. I think this weekend is huge, because obviously we know what's at stake. We know how well Chelsea are playing and how the league table's looking. But I'm not going into these last 3 games thinking Newcastle United are on a downward spiral, or they're not, they're faltering or anything like that. Yes, we can talk about Isak maybe not being in form. Yes, we can maybe talk about some of the other players. But for me, I don't think it's panic stations, do you?
No, at all. I'm going to go back to the point we made earlier. This is a really good point. Newcastle have struggled against any of the top 12 away from home. We've mentioned the bad record at the Amex. I thought they would lose this game, so a point is massive. Have seen some criticism of the resulting performance, but with Brighton being in really bad form, before Newcastle United visited the Amex, they'd only won one of the last 6 in the Premier League. Manager under a little bit of pressure. You could see from the performance that they're not quite at it. But it's not as simple as Aaron is just taking all that and expecting Newcastle United to win. Some places are more difficult to go than others for certain teams. I've seen people claim that Newcastle United have bottled the race for the Champions League. And I just got to shake my head. Like, what do you mean they've bottled it? Newcastle have Champions League qualification in their hands. They've not bottled it at all. Okay, the end product was maybe lacking against Brighton, but for me, it's about points at this stage of the season. I mean, had this been maybe a few months back with everything the same, then yes, I think you could criticise Newcastle and saying, actually, you've got to be beating Brighton, but there's 3 games left. Points is what matters. Newcastle sit 4th, 4 off 2nd, 1 off 3rd, ahead of Chelsea in 5th on goals scored, 2 ahead of Forest, who dropped points against Palace, and Villa are below them. It is close, but it's all in Newcastle's hands. They're going to do it, aren't they?
Yeah, look, I'm not changing my prediction there. I think they do it. I think anybody suggesting that they've bottled it, I mean, come on, let's be real. I think you look at Forest, they look like they're really, really faltering. Newcastle, 3 wins from the last 5. Forest, 1 win from the last 5. Villa, do they have too much to do because they're obviously 3 points behind? They've got a really tough game this weekend away at Bournemouth. I think City are going to cruise into it, as probably many people expected. Look, I'm even looking at Arsenal. That defeat on Saturday at Bournemouth is huge, and I think that will give Newcastle a lot of confidence going to Emirates. I got
criticised so much over the last week for saying that Arsenal second's a real possibility. It's just me believing. Why shouldn't, as a fan, head of a journalist, believe that this Newcastle United side can catch Arsenal? The form they've been on.
They've won one of their last 5 games in the league, Arsenal, and been knocked out of the Champions League.
Newcastle are top of the form table for the last 10, I think. They've lost 5 or 6 of the last 21 or whatever. They're in great form. They've got 2 home games plus that game against Arsenal. Yeah, I believe Newcastle United can still do it. And I don't understand criticism for having a bit of belief in this side when my belief is only based on the fact that they're in great form. So I still think they can catch Arsenal second, but it doesn't matter, does it? It really doesn't matter. Second, third,
I would
fourth, fifth.
take second, and I would also take fifth on goals scored at this point, so it doesn't matter.
But I do think they will finish above fifth. It's going to be a nervous end to the season, to say the least. But what a position Newcastle United are in. Right, we've got some questions sent in to finish up the hour. And thanks to everyone who sent them in. You can do so at the EIBW podcast at reachplc.com. First off, we've got Max who says, love the podcast, guys. Thanks for all the hard work. My question is on Marquis. It seems Newcastle United are most certainly back in from this summer. How important is it that however the deal turns out, it's done quickly?
Look, yeah, Newcastle United, the last thing they will want is a repeat of anything like we saw last summer, a long drawn-out saga. We know Eddie Howe typically, although he doesn't always get it, wants his players in before they go away on pre-season. We saw them move so quickly last summer for Lloyd Kelly, and remember they actually really wanted Tosin Adarabioyo as well, who obviously we'll probably see on Sunday for Chelsea. Eddie Howe will want that defensive asset in. We know they're looking for a right-sided defender. We know actually, or it certainly looks like that Mark Gay interest has been revived a little bit. I think if you'd asked a lot of people in January or a couple of weeks ago, it did look like Newcastle had maybe were looking elsewhere. I certainly thought they were. Gay crucially still hasn't signed a deal at Crystal Palace. He's entering his final year. You know, Palace either need to say, look, we're going to lose him on a free in 2026, or we're going to take a cut price deal, and that might suit Newcastle, along with Liverpool and Chelsea, who are also.
Yeah, Liverpool and Chelsea are interested. Apparently, Liverpool have kind of walked off because of the price tag, and of course, Van Dijk as well signing that new deal. But people or sources at Crystal Palace are actually confident that he might stay at Crystal Palace and sign a new deal if they win the FA Cup.
Interesting.
Because then you get European football.
Yeah.
He's already playing for England. He's comfortable in the setup there with the rest of the kind of the players that he's obviously captain and leading. Some close bonds with the likes of Eze and Minteh. So people I've been speaking to actually say it's not a foregone conclusion that he leaves this summer. If they don't win the FA Cup, then yes, it's more likely than not. But also apparently there's no regret about last summer. No regret whatsoever, because the bottom line is Premier League safety, and it's gone much better than that. But that was kind of the gamble they've gone for, and it's worked. So interesting if they do win the FA Cup to see what happens, because he's got European football. Well, you might not want to leave.
Yeah, look, he's settled. He's club captain. He clearly has a really good affinity with the Crystal Palace supporters, and him and Steve Parish, obviously, they went through a lot last summer. It looked like he was going. He stayed. Look, I think we all know he's a fantastic footballer. I think it's all going to depend on the price this summer.
Yeah, 50 million.
I'd want it a little bit lower.
Man, in the last year of his contract, if he doesn't sign a new deal, maybe
if he's in the last year of his contract, I'm wanting it a lot lower than 50 million.
Austin has wrote in and wants to know about another potential summer transfer. This time, Bayern Munich's Min-jae Kim simply asks, "Is this a realistic possibility?"
He's a player who's been linked more so in the foreign media than he has in the British media. I'm just going to pull up a quote from the player himself here, if my laptop will load.
43 times he's played for Bayern Munich this season, but he does seem surplus to requirements.
Well, he's also said last week when quizzed about interest, not just from Newcastle, but from other teams, for me, there's absolutely no reason to leave. I hope that I can stay, but we'll see.
I guess so. If the manager or the board come down and say you're no longer wanted, then that might change. 28 would cost mountains of money. I think he's still got a couple of years left on his deal. But interestingly, I've been told that the relationship between his representatives and Newcastle United is quite strong. So it's not like they're just starting from scratch, which might play in Newcastle United's hands. I think that would mean it's not the biggest sell, if you understand what I mean, in terms of you have to start that relationship from scratch. So that's a good thing, because they were in for him before he moved to Bayern, and I think before he moved to Napoli as well from Fenerbahce. So they've had a long-standing interest, and if that relationship between, say, the agent and Newcastle is there, that's not a bad thing. That's a really good thing, isn't it? So it would just be a case of sorting out terms, sorting out a price tag, and getting into the Champions League as well. But it's a strange one, isn't it? Because from the outside in, looking in, you go with it. He's played all of those games for Bayern Munich.
He's still not wanted.
And he's not wanted. Like, what's going on? I suppose that's the cut and thrust of being an elite side. You make those decisions, even if it means a man who's played the majority of games this season is out on his ear. But let us know in the comments, would you take him? I mean, between Gay and Kim, which one are you taking?
I think in terms of ability, Kim is better, but I suspect Kim will cost a lot more money than Mark Gay with 1 year left in his deal. Look, Kim would be a huge statement signing for Newcastle, and I think one that would really,
marketing wise as well, it would be massive.
Oh, it'd be huge, especially for that Asian market, which they're obviously trying to target. They're going to South Korea or certainly Southeast Asia this summer. Yeah, it takes a lot of boxes, and look, as I say, with Champions League football potentially on the horizon, that's a huge coup if they can get someone like that in the door.
Lorna says, surely Eddie Howe gets manager of the month. Manager of the year. My mistake there. If he manages to qualify for the Champions League after winning the League Cup with this squad.
I don't know whether, someone might tell me differently, but does the sort of manager of the year get cup?
I don't think it's meant to, but I'm sure Klopp. Did Klopp not get it a couple of years ago?
But did they finish second though? Or because they won Champions League, it's hard to know.
I think getting Champions League with this squad for getting the cup.
I think he would definitely be in the conversation, but then I would also think Slot, Nuno, if they get Champions League. Yeah, I think it would be Slot, Howe, and Nuno for me. Is there anyone at the bottom that's kept them there?
No. Yeah, okay. Les says, with Kelly being injured, does anyone know if it affects the obligation to buy him? That deal's pretty much done and dusted, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly everything that's been coming out of the media in Italy, and Juventus obviously were very, very public with the terms of the deal when they signed him. It looks like Juventus only need to qualify for any European competition through the league, and that means the deal, which is worth 20 million in total, gets put through. I think they have, I want to say they're fourth at the minute.
Yeah,
they drew with Bologna
maybe
over the weekend.
I think they're in a good place though, aren't they?
I think it's very, very tight, that race between fourth and seventh. Juventus they're fourth. Yeah,
it's nearly it's just as tight as the Premier League, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you got Atalanta in third with 68 points. Juventus in fourth with 63, Roma fifth, 63, Lazio sixth with 63, Bologna seventh and 62, Fiorentina in eighth on 59. That is tight.
Yeah, so 3 games left for you. I think that their favours are quite their fixtures, are quite favourable.
It's quite a mouthful.
Yeah, no, sorry. So yeah, I think
it would be so Newcastle's luck for them to miss out, wouldn't
exactly,
it?
Yeah.
But fingers crossed they do get European qualification, because our understanding is that it just rests on that, not his fitness. I know he had a tough start, but before he picked up this injury, he was actually doing all right.
Yeah, look, he's been a regular fixture in this team. Obviously, we know Thiago Motta, the manager who signed him back in January, has been sacked. And they have brought Igor Tudor in, the Croatian coach. It looks like they're sort of staggering towards a European finish, but Kelly certainly looks like he's starting to find his feet. Obviously, he has, I want to say, just suffered a quad injury, thigh injury, which looks like it's going to keep him out at the minute, potentially at the end of the season. But it certainly looks like he's settled in Italy after a tricky start.
We've got Marks in the centre back. I want is Houston from Bournemouth, but it looks like he's probably destined for Chelsea and Liverpool.
Yeah, a lot of teams naturally in for him. £50 million will he scores. He's sort of openly said he's ready to leave Bournemouth.
It's interesting because if he goes for 50 million, I wonder whether that then impacts Newcastle's chase for Semenyo, because they didn't just sell one and then they don't need to sell another.
Yeah, it eases the financial pressure. I know they're obviously in 2 different positions. It's really, really interesting. I mean, Bournemouth have worked wonders when you think Bournemouth got rid of Kelly and replaced him with Huijsen for 12 million. Kelly's then gone to Juventus for 20, and Bournemouth are about to get 50 for Huijsen this summer. It's a fantastic piece of recruitment by Bournemouth.
So impressed with Bournemouth, the manager and their recruitment. The left back's brilliant as well.
Yeah, looks like he's on Liverpool's radar.
Tyler Adams, remember that name?
Who?
Remember that name? He's looking like a good little midfielder, isn't he? Tyler Adams. Regular listeners of the podcast will know exactly what I'm getting at.
Evan Nielsen looks good up top.
Yeah. Final question that was emailed in was from Tom. Wants to know whether we fear Liverpool making a move for Tino Livramento now that Trent Alexander-Arnold's future has been confirmed.
It's interesting, isn't it? He has been tipped and touted as one of the potential replacements for Trent, who we know now is going to leave for Real Madrid. Yeah, look, I'll be a little bit worried. I think if Newcastle get Champions League, that worry eases massively. It looks like Tino's settled up here, but Liverpool's a huge draw naturally. Also, interestingly, will it impact their interest in Joe Gomez? Will it impact their interest on Joel Kwanzaa? This question should be asked as to what Liverpool do now in the summer. It's going to be interesting.
Tino's stopping him.
Yeah,
I can understand
so.
why there's interest in him because he's done really well, especially since going to left back, ironically enough, as well. But he's not going to.
What money would it take?
Oh, I think it'd be close to 100 million.
Do you reckon?
Yeah. I mean, near me. I mean, obviously, he's not the best right back in the Premier League, but there's a few better. Kieran Trippier. And what would it take for you, cash in?
70.
70. I
70.
was going to say 7.
Yeah, 70. I think 70. I think you could maybe get people talking.
He's not going anywhere. Demo says our fans want desperately linking players away when the club said they aren't for sale. Okay, but it is a talking point. You know, the best, arguably the best right back in the Premier League has moved on. Liverpool have been linked to him. We're just answering the questions that are certainly being asked. We've got someone saying, don't sign Kwanzaa. No, thank you. I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. A lot of people defending Alexander Isak in the comments, saying that all players are not 100% all the time. His form hasn't deserted him. He's just having a few games where things haven't went his way. And Demo says Isak isn't missing in action. He's just not getting the service. Murphy is finished with his purple patch, and that means less crosses. All about Murphy. John says, slightly up topic. Are you worried if European football gets? I do not understand that question, John. I apologise. It doesn't quite make sense. Aaron, have you got the trivia to finish?
Certainly have. Last week we had a lot, didn't we? We had about 20, I want to say.
Can't be that many.
No, there's only 9, thankfully. Normal service resumed. There are some familiar faces, though, that seem to be on this every single week.
James Milner.
Okay, you're already going in already?
James Milner's definitely on there.
Yeah.
Dan Burn.
There's 9, by the way. I don't know if I said that.
Okay. Dan Burn. Now it's West begin to struggle. I want to say Christian Atsu for some reason.
No.
Hayden.
Nope.
No. Darryl Murphy.
Nope. Do you want some
Come on then. Save me.
This striker has generally been on every single list we've done for about the past 6 weeks.
Marlon Harewood?
No, he also played for Leeds and Burnley and
Chris Wood played for did he? Oh my god.
Yeah, he played 29 games in 2010. Another striker who's been on quite a few similar period to Marlon Harewood at Newcastle. Sort of Championship, Premier.
Wayne Routledge?
No. Scored. Come on, he's played for Coventry.
Niall Chopra?
No.
Coventry.
Was it Coventry? Yeah.
Down Huckabee?
No.
That's the only
Leon Best.
Leon Best again.
He played for Coventry, I'm sure.
He did. We signed up for Coventry.
2 goalkeepers, real
Tim Krul.
Yeah, Newcastle legends.
Steve Harper.
Yeah, both of them. His namesake and family member used to do lots of flips when he scored.
Martins.
No.
Flips, Tino.
No.
Flips.
Yeah, loads of somersaults.
Yeah.
Famously when he scored.
When he's up over Ferry Martins.
No.
Who was it then?
His family member. His younger.
Kasenza Lualua.
That's correct. Newcastle United stalwart, played 240 games for them and had 1 season at Brighton. He was a defender. Northern Irish.
Aaron Hughes?
Yeah, that's the one. 13 games for Brighton. And the last one on the list is a striker who played 37 games for United in between 94 and 96.
Kitson.
Well done.
There we go. Well, guys, hope we have all enjoyed this. Right, John's question is he is reworded. He's saying, if the European Super League came about again, do we fear that the Public Investment Fund would want to be part of it?
No, I don't think they would be.
I don't think so either.
Good question, though.
Excellent question, John. We got there in the end. Thank you for putting that into us. Thank you to everyone who's watched and listened. Thank you to NordVPN. Thank you to Crown Paints as well. Thank you to Aaron.
Thank you.
Very smart. His usual black numbers not on today, maybe because of the sunshine. Thank you to you guys for watching and listening. Do hit subscribe. Do leave us a rating and review. Do share it across social media. We will see you guys very soon. It's been a pleasure as always. And yeah, have a good rest of the week.